Sweet hour of prayer. Let's sing. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, that calls me from a world of care, and bids me at my Father's throne, make all my wants and riches known. In seasons of distress and grief, my soul has often found relief. And on this day, the tempter snare, my return, sweet hour of prayer. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, the joy I feel, the bliss I share, of those whose name just spirit is strong, desire for thy return. With such I hasten to the place where God my Savior shows his face, and gladly take my station there, and wait for thee, sweet hour of prayer. Sweet hour of prayer, sweet hour of prayer, thy wings shall my petition bear, to him whose truth and faithfulness engage the waiting soul to bless. And since he bids me seek his face, believe his word, and trust his praise, I'll rest on him my every care, and wait for thee, sweet hour of prayer. Song for lesson through page 453. 453. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore, very deeply stained within, sinking to rise no more. But the master of the sea heard my despairing cry, from the waters lifted me, and safe am I. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. All my heart to him I give, ever to him I when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Those in danger look above, Jesus completely saves. He will lift you by His love out of the angry waves. He's the master of the sea, Phyllis will obey. He, your Savior, wants to be saved today. Love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me, love lifted me, love lifted me, when nothing else could help. Love lifted me. Page 416, 916 will be the song after the lesson, 916. Okay. Let's fix this first. Okay.
You have to be on the screen.
Getting green lights, but I'm not getting. Yes, I can just go click and you click it.
Right.
There you go. There went something.
Now
Oh, see,
try.
right?
Now try.
Oh. Okay. Come get this, Connor. You want to change batteries? Meantime, he's going to click. I think most of us know what Daniel chapter 3 is. And has to do with, but there are some things, when you start things that you've looked at before, you tend to find a few things. And that maybe didn't pop out at you before. In fact, I think when most of us go through chapter 3, we kind of focus on the scene of Nebuchadnezzar with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And so, nope. that light's flashing, but what's happening there, I don't know. So anyway, and that was the thing that I started looking at. It was a little bit different. We will focus on that when we get to it. But there's something as we start out that I really want to look at a little bit, just briefly. Notice here in chapter 3, verse 22, Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold whose height was 60 cubits and its width 6 cubits. He set it up in the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. And King Nebuchadnezzar sent word together the satraps, the administrators, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of the province to come to the dedication of the image with which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. What has he done?
Well, that dream of him being the head of gold, that apparently seated itself, and he decided to,
Yeah, kind of went to his head. And that's it. And he's made this big image, and he's kind of tried to make himself a deity.
Here's the question. What's the timeline? I suspect there was a substantial timeline from the end
Go back.
of chapter 2 to the end of chapter 3.
One more.
What I read on it was, I just don't know if there's maybe 15 to 20 years. Okay. But
Yeah, it's an estimation.
It's just happened.
Yeah.
The end of it, right? It had time for
Yes.
that to wear off. What happened?
Yeah, it kind of had a time to wear off. It had enough time, and let's put this into it, that there were those who had gotten jealous of the other three, of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That's their whole point of it. And I want to get into that because their point, go 2 slides. One more. Went back to January 2:48 and 49. This is at the end of that dream. And it tells the king promoted Daniel and gave him many gifts and made him ruler over the whole province of Babylon and chief administrator over all the wise men of Babylon. Also Daniel petitioned the king, and he set Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego over the affairs of the province of Babylon. But Daniel said at the gate of the king, you want to brought this up? Who was at this dedication? Now, some will say, well, maybe Daniel wasn't there, or he was off on business. That's what people want to deal with. Maybe he wasn't actually there. Some say maybe Nebuchadnezzar was protecting Daniel, had it because of his gift of interpreting dreams, wasn't about to let anything happen to him. We'll get into it, but these three, it's kind of like they stood out. They would have been there. They would have been there at that dedication. That's the whole point that I want to get into. Because here, notice it. So the satraps, those three were among the satraps, the administrators, that would include Daniel, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the officials of province gathered together for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up, and they stood. You're ahead of me. They stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Now, then a herald cried aloud. Okay, so they're in front of him. Now, we don't know how many of these people there were, but obviously there were enough there that Nebuchadnezzar wasn't necessarily focused on one person. I think he was more basking in his own glory. So he wasn't looking to see who was doing what. And we don't know that it happened exactly this time, but notice what the herald cried aloud. To you it is commanded, O peoples, nations, and languages, that at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, in symphony with all kinds of you shall fall down and worship the gold image that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. And whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast immediately into the midst of a fiery furnace. Now this reminds us that Nebuchadnezzar hadn't toned down his ruling at this time. Just as he said, I'm going to kill all you wise men, not only will I kill anyone that doesn't do this, it's going to be a brutal death. And here's the point. So at that time, when all the people heard the sound of the horn, flute, harp, and lyre, and symphony with all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and languages fell down and worshiped the gold image which King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. This is one of these things you've got to take into consideration what it means here with the all. Because we're fixing to see not everybody did that. In general, everybody that heard this, that was there, bow down. In general. So do you think Daniel bowed down? I don't think so. Next slide. Because we come back to this. This is one thing I wanted to bring up, because he's telling all nations, all people, everybody that's there, here's what I want you to do. Now you go back as far as Daniel, Mishael, Azariah, what's the other one's name? Hananiah. Okay? Hananiah, Mishael, that's their Hebrew names. They would have known the law. Now, here's the thing about this. I want to ask you this question. Is this in the law just so it be part of the law? Or is it inherently binding to all people? Notice, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of Pharaoh. This is directed to Israel, right here. He's addressing it. But does the rest of it pertain to everyone? Notice, you shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them nor serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing mercy to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. There's an interesting part there when you finish that. It gives a scope that I don't hold just you accountable for this. I hold all people accountable for this. When Seth is born, Genesis 4 makes a statement that about this time, it gives the age of Abraham, and about this time men began to call upon the name of the Lord. What law were they under? Patriarchal law. Okay? Who was under the Mosaic law?
Everybody. The Hebrew people leaving Egypt.
The Hebrew people leaving Egypt. So what were the other people under? Patriarchal law. You want some evidence of that? Go back and look at Egypt. Did God not punish Pharaoh for not recognizing him as God? It's the same law Abraham was under. What was one of the first things he told Abraham to do when he told him to get rid of it out of his people? Get away from your people. Get rid of your other gods. Me only. When Jacob came back, he was coming back to the promised land from Laban, God visited him and told him, get rid of these other gods. See? This is not just a law that began with Mosaic law, or a command, or making it sin, but it was one that began from the beginning of time. You go to Romans chapter 1:18, it tells you that God is upon them. Why? Because they are without excuse. And that's all people. It was passed down. So even though, and this comes important later, even though the focus on chapter 3 would be on these three Hebrew boys or men, God's expectation and what Nebuchadnezzar was doing was encouraging all those people to sin against God. Now, the problem is, who all took it? Excellent. Think about this. I thought about that. I wonder how many Jewish people from Judah, bow down. So this falls under. Then I saw that for all the causes for which backsliding Israel had committed adultery, I had put her away and given her a certificate of divorce. Yet her treacherous sister Judah did not fear, but went and played the harlot also. Think about it. What is he telling you? You saw what happened to the northern kingdom and how it was carried away for its idolatry. Yet it didn't stop you from doing it either. What Jeremiah actually pointed out, this is the reason the captivity is going on. Or one of the reasons. It's the reason that it's happening to Israel. Okay? We'll get to another one a little later. Okay, so here's the chart. Here's where it comes about. Therefore, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and accused the Jews. Now, the point being is, as we know, it's kind of like if we can get these three, we can get all of them. All of them that don't bow down. That's what they come down. And notice how they make this point. They spoke and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Let's stop for a second. What nationality was Nebuchadnezzar? Everything that is implied is that he was a Chaldean. The Chaldeans ruled on the battle. So his own native people, how are they going to feel? You appointed these Hebrews over us. You, O king, have made a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, and psaltery, and whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon. There's the key of the jealousy. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not paid due regard to you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up. They have no respect for you, is what they're trying to imply. They're flat out disobeying you.
Undoubtedly, they've been watching.
They have been watching. They were looking at it. And I actually have a different conclusion other than Brother Daughtery lists some things people said. He doesn't really say one, but I got a different conclusion. I don't think they brought up Daniel first because they were afraid to bring up Daniel. And they wanted to see how it went with these three, and if they got these three convicted, now we'll go after Daniel, because you done set a precedent. I notice, excellent. So what they said is true. So then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and fury, gave the command to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they brought these men before the king. So here we go. They not only went to him, they got him angry. In fact, I would basically say Nebuchadnezzar probably had a very short fuse and a quick temper. Anybody question him, and boom, you're in trouble. But notice how he goes about this. A lot of places, people like him would have just threw him in the furnace. He asked a question. Folks saying it, is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you not serve my gods or worship the gold image which I have set up? Now, if you are ready at the time you hear the sound of the horn, flute, harp, lyre, psaltery, and symphony, and all kinds of music, and you fall down and worship the image which I have made, good. And what is he doing?
Trying to get them to do it, so you don't have to go through.
So evidently, he had a little bit of partiality to them. Even though they had been reported to defy him, for some reason, he says, I like these guys, and I want to give them a chance. Because the decree said, it didn't matter if you don't do it, in the furnace you go. But notice he does say, but if you do not worship, you shall be cast immediately into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. And who is the God who will deliver you from my hands? Who? Who is the God?
Let's assume that the 15 years that I lived in some kind of, whatever it was, right. Isn't it interesting how fast we can fall apart if we don't stay tuned in to God's word? In chapter 1, he's tapping Daniel on the back, and he is God.
Chapter 2.
For the fact that they could reach out there and pull up his dream, and as I spoke to you about, possibly reconstitute for him.
Yeah.
But certainly tell him what it meant, and how he praises that God, and yet 2 years later, all of a sudden, he's God.
Well,
They fall apart. How many times do we have to miss church services to really start going to dream? Let's say that. This kind of thing.
I mean, how many times do we have to start skipping praying for our prayer life?
It's just amazing.
Or studying in my study. It does. Humans are creatures of habit, and when they start out, it is easier to stop a habit that you don't necessarily committed to than it is one that you are. And it's harder to start one that's brand new. You have to really think about it. And what you're saying, you're right. This thing that Nebuchadnezzar brought, that God brought up Nebuchadnezzar said in chapter 2, that was new. Okay. God said he's put me up here. Okay. And I think the point, as time went on and he was blessed, in fact, we can see it by chapter 4, I think that still everything is going to his head. I'm that king of gold. I can do no wrong.
His kingdom at that point was very successful.
Very successful. And he's thinking that, kind of like those friends of Job, if I'm this successful, God likes me in this position.
Or maybe he thinks he done it and he's forgetting about God.
Yeah, and he's forgetting a little bit. I think he's forgetting about it too. But he is still in that mindset. And notice the way he says this. He's in that mindset that, yeah, Daniel's God is different, but not much. Because to him, these other gods are still God. And that's the point. Who is the God who will deliver you from my hand? Who can stop me? Well, you know, I'm with Joey. He's not even thinking that if God can interpret dreams, why can't he stop me from doing this? He's still like that point that even the Chaldeans had told when he brought up, you've got to tell me the dream. No man can do this, only the gods can do that. Still kind of thinking like them, these guys don't dwell among men, so how are they going to stop me? And might even interpreting a dream is one thing, but these guys are going to fire a furnace, who's going to stop them from dying? And that's the point they have. Who's going to deliver you from my hand? And that's the big question they have to answer. No. And I entitled this "A Strong Deliverer" at this point. You know, there's a song, and it actually hit my head as I was reading this, my thought. Strong deliverer, be my shield. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. What is that saying about their mind? We know that we are not to fall down and put any God before our God, and we are not to worship any God before our God, and we are not going to do it. That's what's in their mindset. They already made them. They heard the command. Anyone that doesn't do it will be cast in the fiery furnace. They had already made up their mind. I wouldn't even be surprised if some of them people that made the accusation hadn't already asked them, why aren't you following Nebuchadnezzar's command? We don't serve Nebuchadnezzar's gods. If that is the case, what? If it's the case that if we don't fall down and you'll put us in that fiery furnace, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O king. But if not, the question isn't, will he not deliver them from his hand, but will it be through getting them out of the fiery furnace, or through their death, deliver their bondage from their bondage? That's really what they're saying. He says, if not, if he doesn't deliver us from the fiery furnace, let it be known to you, O king, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the golden image which you have set up. If it means our death, we are going to serve God and him alone, and it doesn't matter what you do. That's commitment. That's faith.
Who wants to serve a false God?
Who wants to serve a false God when they know it's a false God? They understood. You think they understood? I know you read on through the book of Daniel, you know Daniel understands why they were in Babylon. I think they understood why they were in Babylon. And I think that they understood that if they fell down and worship, they'd just be going in the same sin that got them put there in the first place. You know, it's kind of like I had a brother that used to get in trouble for the same thing over and over again. He said something to me. I said, most of the time, not everything I did that I was stupid about, but I thought I could get away with them if I was a little quieter. But the thought was, I never wanted a whipping for the same thing twice. It makes sense to me. I think that's kind of why are we going to go into that which got us into trouble in the first place. And I really think the point is they understand that where they are, if they start worshiping, what happens to those Jews that are living among the people? If they see these that have been set up given in, what happens? See, they're not just in a place where they have to determine how they're going to serve God, but influence. And I really think they also understand, this is my opinion here, that they are just the first ones they're going after. Because if they're jealous of them, they have to be jealous of Daniel. Because Daniel's in the king's gate. Then Nebuchadnezzar was full of fear, and the expression of his face changed toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Think his blood pressure was up? And the fire, yeah. Notice he spoke and commanded that they heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated. He's angry. He is angry, and he's going to make them pay. And notice he commanded certain mighty men of valor. Okay? These guys ain't going to break loose and run. Who were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Next slide. Oh, okay. I missed it. Well, it's the same thing. Therefore, because the king's command was urgent, and the furnace exceedingly hot, the flame of the fire killed those men who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And this is ugly about Nebuchadnezzar. He had no regard for the life of the men that he commanded to throw them in. If you get killed carrying out my command, that's what you're supposed to do. But notice, and these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Now right there, that would kind of get me to wondering. Just right there at the beginning. It killed the guys throwing them in, but these guys fell down and didn't die going in. He said, okay, well, they ought to start screaming in a minute now, right? Michael. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was astonished. He rose in haste and spoke, saying to his counselors, did we not cast 3 men bound into the midst of the fire? They answered and said to the king, true, O king. Look, he answered, I see 4 men loose walking in the midst of the fire, and they are not hurt. We put in 3, now there's 4. And no, and the form of the 4th is like the Son of God. Now that's the New King James translation. There are some translations say, like a Son of God. Now people have taken that and tried to say, well, that wasn't the pre-incarnate Christ. And it's a mistranslation here. Okay? How many gods are there? Nebuchadnezzar recognized that it had the form of a son of a god. So what son could it be? The Son. That's the only son it could be. Because there are no other gods. He has no other son. And it tells us something about how God feels about his people. Just like he sent his son to die for us and deliver us from hell, he sent his son to deliver them from the fiery furnace. And you can claim that's my opinion, but I'm going to tell you that's the fact. Because it can't be any other.
How would he know what the Son of God looked like?
Only if God had pointed it to him in his mind. There's another thing. See, but God records it.
Well, King James, I believe, what I read on that, just a proper statement would be like a son of God. And I see how they write it to be a little bit of a stretch, but
Well, here's what you come down to. It's like in New King James, Old King James, you'll have all those Old Testament names translated from Hebrew to Greek to English. Whereas New King James goes back and just says, hey, let's just get the Hebrew translation, what people know, and put it in there and make it a little clearer. That's exactly what they do. Okay? My father used to call Noe, N-O-E. He pronounced that because of the King James Bible, and I tried to figure out, and my father said, Daddy, who's Noe? He goes, well, Noah in the Old Testament. I said, well, then he's still Noah in the New Testament. Okay? Right?
That's how you can tell the different writers.
Well, I mean the different.
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but I mean that's where it came down to, and when I started, I'm like, okay, how does it get here in the King James, and I understood then what they did. It was translated into the Greek, and then that was translated to English, whereas the New King James and others just go back and say this is what it is. It makes it understanding clearer. It's not changing anything because it's still that translation. It's still what it is. But here you go back. Why do they get this conclusion? Why would they do this? There's other translations that have it. as the Son of God. This came up when I was in Bible school, preaching school. Jackie brought up in Revelation, well, it was in the study of Revelation there where it says that he had feet of fine brass as been burned in a fire. In a fire. And he said, when other time can you see that Jesus might have been in a fire? He believed it was, he said, you can't, he said, it's my opinion, but it's an allusion to, connects back to this.
I find it interesting that Nebuchadnezzar, I assume, was sitting there watching this take place, because it says he rose.
Yeah.
Why would a king even bother to see these three people destroyed if he didn't have maybe some, like you alluded to a while ago,
Well,
a little bit of sympathy toward or something? Now, I know he got mad, I get that, but.
yeah. And he wanted to make sure it was, I think part of it was he wanted to make sure it was carried out like he said it was carried out, but he also wanted to see. I think he wanted to see, will their God be able to deliver them? Well, that's an absolute, and I said, I think.
Yeah, I understand. You might have a point, I don't know, but it is interesting that he obviously was there with us.
Yeah, he was there.
Well,
And
the thing about it, is that if somebody gives you a truth, you're a denominational person, somebody gives you a truth that you have never heard before, and you start reading that, and you never believed that, you start reading that, and they teach you that, you say, hey, there's something to that. You look into it, wow, there's something to that.
yeah,
That ought to get your mind starting to,
and I think,
inclined to start studying more. Say, hey, there's something to this. Let me keep on.
and let me go back and let me explain something. And we did this a long time ago. You go back into Pharaoh, when they carried money, each plague God did for them to see that he was God. Now he said Pharaoh will harden his heart. And with each plague, by doing these plagues, I'll harden his heart because he's determined to harden his heart. I'm trying to get him to see. He even here is trying to get Nebuchadnezzar to see, and I got a verse at the end that I want to hold on to so that we can see that. Because when you get in chapter 4, it's like the light bulb completely comes on for Nebuchadnezzar. Now notice, when he says this, and I mean, even him saying, like a son of a God.
What was the picture like?
What did he see that made him, and obviously, I mean, I've always visualized this, those three looking to him.
So again, he might have been something.
Well, not looking at him, but looking God, the pre-incarnate.
Like Peter, when he saw Moses and Elijah.
He
never
never
laid eyes on him.
He never laid out, but he knew who they were. So where'd they get it from? They had to get it from God,
It's an interesting
So somewhere, somebody put this thought, this man is different from any other man you've ever seen.
And that's what we have to incline our minds to think, hey, where does this come from? Well, it's got to come from somewhere.
Yeah, it's got to come from somewhere. And well, guess what? I know who didn't give him that thought. It wasn't the devil. Okay, go ahead. Notice Nebuchadnezzar went near the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spoke, saying, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now notice this. Servants of the Most High God, come out and come here.
The light was coming back on.
A light was coming back on. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came from the midst of fire. What happened to the fourth guy?
He wasn't a guy.
He wasn't a guy. His job was done. He went back. And here's the thing. Did God need anyone in that fiery furnace to protect those three? Did he have to send him?
No, he could have done it all that way, but that was part of,
That is part of it.
Nebuchadnezzar's lesson.
Yes, he's letting them know, hey, I'm here. This isn't a fluke.
Revelation.
It is. It's revealing to him. And notice, and the satraps and administrators, governors, king's council gathered together, and they saw these men on whose body the fire had no power. The hair of their head was not singed, nor were their garments affected, and the smell of fire was not on them.
They were delivered before they set.
They were delivered before they ever got in there. They were preserved. It was as if they weren't even in the fire. Now, I want you to think about it. If you're a witness of this, and you were one of those accusers, what are you doing?
Sitting in this, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna back up and not get noticed over here. I'm gonna keep it quiet. Right? Go ahead. That was in part. Nebuchadnezzar spoke, saying, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who sent his angel and delivered his servants who trusted in him. And they have frustrated the king's word and yielded their bodies, that they should not serve nor worship any God except their own God. They have an exception to my rule. Now, they have that exception. Who else has that exception for sure? Daniel. What about the rest of the Jews, like Ezekiel, that were there? All they've got to do is say, we worship the Most High God. And Nebuchadnezzar has already decreed that we are able to worship our God. In decreeing that they were, he decreed that all who worship them were able to. Notice, therefore I make a decree that any people, nation, or language which speaks anything amiss against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be cut in pieces, their houses shall be made to ashes, because there is no other God who can deliver like this. Now, he's still got one little problem. God's just an exceptional God. He places God at the top. He has yet to understand completely what that means. Because that's what he said to Daniel. There is no other God who can interpret dreams and foretell things as you have told me. And now there's no other like the Most High God.
Of course, you recognize in this statement, you recognize that the little person as an angel.
Yeah, messenger.
Which it doesn't mean it's not Christ himself. It's saying that's what Nebuchadnezzar recognizes that as a messenger.
Someone that was sent. Yeah, that's all that angel means is a messenger. And that's the Greek word. It's interesting that all translations go and bring across the Greek word as angel. Because that's where it comes from, it's angelos. But that comes back, and I noticed that, and that's what have caused some in one particular region to say that Jesus is just an exalted angel. Because there's various times where the pre-incarnate he's referred to as the angel or the captain of angels in the Old Testament. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. So what was their goal? Those Chaldeans that had accused them. Do away with them entirely. What happened? Went the other direction. Things can backfire on you. Next slide. Here's some things. Here's the one that I was looking at. Judah had been carried away, and and all the tribes, various tribes that were there, all 12 of them, people from all 12 tribes. And they were carried away for punishment for their doctrine. But they were also carried away with a purpose for Babylon. Here in Jeremiah 51, God starts announcing the punishment that is coming to Babylon. Babylon was a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunk. The nations drank her wine, therefore the nations are deranged. What is he talking about? She was a cup in my hand with a purpose, but she chose to get the nations drunk, to lead them further astray. Just as we saw him worship these things. Babylon has suddenly fallen and been destroyed. Well for her. Take balm for her pain, perhaps she may be healed. There is a thing reminding us that though someone falls before God, it should not be a statement of, well, they got what they deserve, more of, if they don't realize. Notice this, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. I'm both an article falls in that. Forsake her, and let us go everyone to his own country, for her judgment reaches to heaven. And the Lord has revealed our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. If Babylon, the Chaldeans had paid attention to what was happening with Israel and what God did in front of Nebuchadnezzar, they could have been healed from their idolatry. But they refused. And so her fall, and it goes further on what God's going to do. Her fall was foretold. But notice the Lord has revealed our righteousness. Come and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. Come a time they'll go home. Guess what? Wasn't the one problem that Judah and all those tribes that went back, the one problem they never had again. One after other gods. After captivity, that never became a problem. Notice how important it is to understand how much, not only were they, even in their punishment, they were to be an influence. God doesn't just pick anybody to do the things he wants. He has a reason behind it. And that comes back to that point of saying at the beginning that not only was it wrong for Israel to go after other gods, it was wrong for all people to go after all gods. That wasn't just a part of the law to be part of the law. It was part of the law because it was inherently sinful. And God held Babylon accountable just as he held Judah accountable. The difference is they were held more accountable because they should have known better. What's your Psalm 916? Let's stand. 916. Let's stand and sing.
Praise God.
heartache shall come, no more clouds in the sky, no more tears to dim the eye. All is peace forevermore on that happy golden shore. What a day, glorious day that will be. What a day that will be when my Jesus I shall see. When I look upon his face, the one who saved me by his grace. When he takes me by the hand and leads me through the promised land. What a day, glorious day that will be.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. Michael, would you please?
Let's pray. Dear most gracious Son and Father above, I thank you for allowing us being able to worship you tonight and hear a beautiful lesson by Brother Al. We thank you for allowing all of us to be able to make it here safely. We pray for all those that weren't able to make it here tonight. Pray for all those that are sick and we hope that they get better. And we pray for all the people that are on the road traveling. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.